Oliveira Lawyers. Today is Wednesday, June the 18th. Now it's 12:32 Rio de Janeiro time. We are starting one more live stream, and I want to start by apologizing. We're going to have a lot of noise. As some of you probably know, like we are getting a second location in Rio de Janeiro here in Leblon, and we are right in the middle of some renovations here, so there's going to be some hammering and noises. And again, I apologize, and let's try to make the best out of it. But here we are, and I'm glad to have you guys on board. I see we have some participants as of now, and you have a priority. If there is a topic, if there is a subject of your interest, just write in the comment section here in the chat window, and we're gonna address live. In the meantime, we're gonna take a look at the main news, the main headlines here in Brazil, so we can discuss about what's going on. So as you can see here, we have Netanyahu. We have, of course, like the war between Iran and Israel is a major topic in Brazil, right? There is also a discussion about prior President Bolsonaro, and there was some type of spy activity, and it looks like the Brazilian agency, ABIN is the Brazilian agency in charge of, spy activities, and they were spying on President Lula and other, political opponents. So that's the main headline you see over here. Nothing about President Trump, which is unusual. Or, all right, here is President Trump, and they are discussing about the ongoing disputes between Ministry Alexandre de Moraes and particularly the social media. Brazil is seeking like a lot of regulation of social media channels, and naturally the United States are pushing back. There is also this kind of, I'm not going to say understanding, but there is also this kind of potential persecution by the Brazilian judiciary of, like right-wing politicians and personalities, not just like politicians, but personalities as well. So that's what you see over here. All right, I don't see any participation. All right, better saying, I see Bill. Bill, oi Luciano, hope you're doing great. Thank you so much, Bill. I can tell you that I'm certainly better than I was in our last live stream. I was under the weather. My voice was pretty much a gun, and I really appreciate your support and all of you who were there despite the horrible voice. Let me know how is working the sound now. How does it sound now, right? Can you hear me okay? Let me know. And what are you guys doing? Like any of you are here in Rio de Janeiro or maybe Brazil, let us know where you are right now and what you are experiencing in Brazil. The idea here is not just to have like a talking head, but also some sharing between the participants of our live streams. We have Ahmed. Hello, Mr. Oliveira, and I wish you all the best in your new office. Thank you so much, Ahmed. I really appreciate the support. I really enjoy talking to you, Ahmed. Thank you for the support. All right. Bill says, sounds good. Little echo, some echo. All right. That's good to know. I'm using a different microphone right now. It's a microphone from Rode, but it's a portable one. I think we need to do some testing. Thank you for the feedback, Bill. And talking about Rio de Janeiro, some feedback about transactions, right, that we have in Rio de Janeiro. In Rio de Janeiro, properties by the beach line, by the coast, they're typically gonna have, you know, like a better value, and many people are gonna be pursuing those properties, right? So usually there is less room for negotiation, and sellers, they are sometimes, you know, they feel like more entitled when they are negotiating with buyers, and that is interesting because you don't see this type of reality elsewhere, even in São Paulo. São Paulo is another major market in Brazil, but typically you're not gonna see, you know, like sellers in São Paulo as demanding as sellers in Rio de Janeiro are gonna be. It's a very unique market, like across the country, São Paulo, you know, like the Northeast, the center west, like we say here in Brazil for, you know, most of the country, you don't see, like there is a more balanced reality in terms of negotiation, but in Rio de Janeiro, sellers are pretty different from what you see in the remainder of the country. All right, we have a Dolphy. How does a Haitian living in the US get a visa to get to Brazil? Dolphy, so if you are living legally in the United States, like if you have a green card, then, you know, your address on your driver license is gonna dictate the Brazilian consulate that you're gonna use to apply for a visitor visa, okay? Unfortunately, because of the sheer number of Haitians in Brazil, Brazil typically is like applying a higher scrutiny whenever a Haitian is applying for a visitor visa. But the rule is, if you're just traveling in the United States, in this case, you should apply from Haiti. But if you are living legally in the United States, like if you have a resident card, if you have a driver license, then yes, you are welcome to apply for a visitor visa through a Brazilian consulate in charge of your address in the United States. Again, I want to apologize for the noise. I'm not going to tell our guys here to stop. Just bear with me. I hope you guys can understand what I'm saying. And let's keep going. All right, I have here Samuel. Samuel has a question about immigration. How long does it take to get a passport after getting the PR through stable union until you have the passport in your hand? Samuel, so if you secure a residency in Brazil based on the União Estável, and for those of you who don't know what União Estável is, it is something equivalent to the common law marriage in the United States. So in the United States, for most states, you're going to have a couple of options. One is going to be the civil union, and for the civil union, you typically will do some paperwork somewhere to get the civil union. So you're not marrying, but you are a couple who's formalizing your relationship before the law, right? That's the civil union. The other option is like you don't do anything, right? You don't do pretty much anything. You just live together. That's gonna be the so-called common law marriage, meaning there is no formal marriage, but based on common law, you are in a relationship that is kind of recognized as a marriage, right? And in Brazil, we're gonna call União Estável for both things. So União Estável is kind of confusing because a União Estável, it could be formalized if you go to a registry and you get the paperwork for the União Estável, but it could also be informal in a sense that you're not getting any paperwork whatsoever, but you are still in a relationship that's going to be recognized by law, right? And in Brazil nowadays, very weirdly, União Estável and a typical marriage, they are going to offer the similar rights, right? Like it shouldn't be like that, and it wasn't like that for most of our history. Marriage would be here, and união estável would be over here. But for some reason, the Brazilian Supreme Court, they are now thinking that both things are pretty much just the same, and therefore, from an immigration perspective, if you secure residency based on união estável, you're going to have the same rights that people under a traditional marriage are going to have. And from the immigration journey perspective, once you secure this residency, if you are in a relationship for over 2 years, typically you're going to get the residência por tempo indeterminado, which in Portuguese is our way of saying like permanent residency, okay? And under the permanent residency, Samil, when it's based on marriage or união estável, in just a single year, you could potentially apply for citizenship or naturalization, okay? You gotta be 1 year living in the country. You also needed to communicate fluently in Portuguese, all right? It doesn't work if it is like, an intermediary level. You're gonna need to be able to communicate properly in Portuguese, like through conversation, writing, reading, comprehension. All right, so there is that. Now, the timeline being 1 year, it doesn't mean that you're gonna get your passport after 1 year. It just means you're gonna have a shot at securing the naturalization after a year. In our experience, once you apply, it could take up to a year for your application to be reviewed, the interview to be conducted, and the biometrics to be completed, right? So roughly like a year down the line after you apply, that's when you're gonna have the adjudication of your naturalization, and the formal step is gonna be a publishing at the Brazilian official gazette that you are now considered, or your naturalization was approved, and therefore you are now a Brazilian national. All right, I hope that helps some of you. A son asking about Brazil Digital Nomad Visa. If last 3 months, 18,000 US dollars in a bank account, can I apply? A son, so for the digital nomad, from the financial perspective, you have 2 different routes. One route is for you to show that you're being paid 1,500 US dollars a month. And then if you're following this route, you're gonna need to match your contract or letter of verification with whoever is paying the 1,500, right? So let's say if you're working for company ABC, company ABC is gonna provide you this letter of verification, and the Brazilian immigration is going to make sure that the money is being paid into your bank account is being paid by company ABC. So that's the 1,500 a month route. Now, if you pick the 18,000, typically here at the firm, and this is an important distinction, I'm talking about the applications we handle. We're not talking about applications by, self-applicants or also through a consulate. We're talking about applications in Brazil, when the applicant is physically in Brazil, and when they are applying through us. So when our clients show the $18,000, is going to be a single bank statement. It got to be somewhat recent, like 30 days, 60 days old. And then the other requirement is that you're going to still show the letter of verification. All right, Hassan? So the key word here, or here the point of attention, is that just the $18,000 alone is not going to be enough. And we like to joke informally here with some of the clients who schedule a consultation with us. We say, listen, if the $18,000 was enough and you wouldn't even need the letter of verification, guess what? This should not be called a digital nomad visa. Instead, it should be called the $18,000 visa, because if you have 18,000, you get it, and you don't need to show that you work. So that's not really the digital nomad track. That would be the $18,000 track. And of course, Brazil does not offer that. it gotta be the 18,000 or the 1,500 a month, plus a letter of verification of work or a contract. All right, Hassan, I hope that makes sense. Moses, nice to see you again. Good afternoon, Nigerian time. Welcome, Moses. Good to see you as well. Samuel says, I heard in Rio is more difficult and things are delayed more than in other cities. Is that right? That's interesting sharing, Samuel, and it is actually true. Rio de Janeiro in particular, you see a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy, and something that's very unique, not necessarily to the property side of things, like real estate transactions, is about the registries in charge of birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates, and so on. They are one of the last few registries that are still to be integrated into the national database. And there is absolutely no reason for them to not join the national database other than making additional money on whoever needs their services, right? So something very typical of Rio de Janeiro, particularly the government institutions, they have a more kind of old mentality, and maybe because it was actually the first capital of the Brazilian Empire, and then the Brazilian Republic. Rio de Janeiro is still like in this kind of mindset that Rio de Janeiro is super special, and you gotta pay an extra fee to be enjoying whatever you are enjoying in Rio de Janeiro, right? No, I'm not like criticizing. I'm not. I'm more like stating how things work in Rio de Janeiro. And it's kind of understandable, right? It's such a unique and a wonderful city that there is there should be some type of downside. And the downside in Rio de Janeiro is like this very old and anachronic approach to public services, if you will. All right, so really nice comment, Samuel. That's exactly the case. Rio de Janeiro, things are. There is another, saying here. We say, listen, Rio de Janeiro is not for amateurs, right? And it's a kind of, tongue in the cheek kind of way of saying, how things are in Rio de Janeiro. Okay, we have a Moses. Moses is asking, after securing residency by investment for the investor, how long it will take to get reunion visa for my family? So Moses, once you have residency in Brazil, right? So very important for you to note, you are unable to apply for family reunification if you are applying in Brazil until you secure the residency, right? So if you secure the residency in Brazil through an investment, the day you have the protocol is like a printout of your residency. So that's about 2 months prior to the actual card becoming ready. But as soon as you get the printout with your resident number on it, in theory, if you have every single paper available for your family to apply for the family reunification residency, because you apply in Brazil, you could in theory apply on the same day. Okay, so again, once you have your residency secured and you have your resident number, you don't even need to wait for the card. On the same date, potentially you could apply for the family reunification residency. Right now, if we're talking about a visa that's going to be issued abroad, it does change a little bit the dynamics. Samuel, what kind of question do they ask when you're going to federal police for applying PR to stable union? They are going to ask about your relationship, Samuel. Like, I mean, and just to give you some additional feedback, we typically here at the firm, we're not going to take a união estável case unless the couple has the escritura, which is the deed, right? Just because if you don't have this paperwork, even though in theory you could go to Polícia Federal, Nowadays, most of the time they are going to decline granting you the residency, just because like there is a lot of fraud going on. There is just like, as you probably know, like in the United States they are blacklisting, like countries by the dozens. And so in Brazil we don't have this approach of blacklisting countries, but we have some level of reaction by the Brazilian federal police, trying to protect the integrity of our immigration system by denying whatever they don't like. But listen, it's not a don't like from a mean type of perspective. It's more like from a protective perspective. So if they see people coming like with, I don't know, they have a shared address, they have some other like light evidence of a relationship. In this case, Police Federal is going to say, listen, the documents are not enough, go away, okay? Now, that's why we don't take those cases, just because we think it's more like a long shot. We don't like to take cases with high chances of denial, because at the end of the day, if you are paying for our services, and if you're not getting what you're paying for, guess what? You're going to get mad at us, and understandably, right? Because you're paying money and you're not getting what you want. So here we are very strict in terms of accepting clients, and we're not going to accept a client unless we have a very good chance of securing what they need. So for União Estável, our baseline or our requirement here at the firm is that the applicants, the couple, they do have the escritura, the deed of União Estável. And by the way, the deed of União Estável is not like extremely difficult for you to secure. Like, you're gonna need lots of documents, but again, once you have the deed of União Estável, the immigration is gonna change their understanding, and they are gonna be much more amenable to give you the residency, okay? But questions-wise, most of the interactions that you're gonna have with the Brazilian Federal Police is gonna be about the relationship. They are gonna ask to see many of the documents that you gathered. They wanna see, they wanna inspect, and they are gonna interact, and they wanna make sure that you have a legitimate relationship. Now, again, the deed of União Estável, it's gonna be extremely helpful, because if you got to that point of, getting a deed showing that there is a relationship, it's almost like just married, right? So that's why Polícia Federal, they are not gonna give you as much of a hard time when you have the deed of União Estável. All right, who else? Dolphy, if the Haitian had a visa to be in the US, can you get a visa for Brazil in the US without returning to Haiti? Dolphy, we never been in that type of situation typically, right? Haiti is not in our priority markets, because we typically prioritize, countries of English-speaking populations, and that we know, again, just like in the example I just gave you about the União Estável, just because there was a very high influx of Haitians into Brazil, nowadays it's very hard for a Haitian to secure a visa to Brazil. But I would say that if you don't have a formal residency in Brazil, there is a good chance that the Brazilian consulate is not going to accept your application, because if you just have like a visitor visa, it's not natural for you to apply for another visitor visa from the US. At least from the Brazilian consulate's perspective, right? That's not my rule, that's the Brazilian consulate's understanding. From the Brazilian consulate's understanding, you would need to apply from your home country, not from another country that you're just visiting. But again, if you have a regular residency in another country, then you are absolutely free to apply from that country in which you are legally residing, Dolphy. Now, Dolphy, there is another track that I think is still available. Again, this is not like a priority market for us, But I know that there was another program, and maybe it's still available. And for this program, if you have a close relative in Brazil, you could potentially apply for a residency in Brazil based on the close relative that you already have living in Brazil. Okay, so I'm not sure if you know about this track, but I'm just sharing in case you don't, so you can investigate more about it. Now, let me ask you, how is the noise going on? I know there is a lot of conversation, like here in the background. There is hammering. There is, people using screwdrivers. Let me know if the live stream is still bearable or not. I hope so. Let's go to the next one. Moses, do you think reais can still appreciate below 5 reais for a dollar? Moses, I don't think so, right? And this is more like a guess. For certain, nobody can forecast exchange rates. Like if there was anyone who was really good at doing so, they would be billionaires because they would be just, buying and selling currency according to the future trends. But what I can tell you, like we have a formal relationship with at least 4 different currency exchange banks. All of them, they are gonna issue like reports. But listen, I can tell you, nobody knows the future. Now, my feeling, just like from a general take on the reality of nowadays, the war, the United States, the Brazilian economy, I don't think that Brazilian real is gonna appreciate to the point of a dollar buying less than 5 reais, right? Like I think that nowadays, a dollar buying 5 reais and 50 cents, it does sound like a decent or an appropriate or like a correct currency exchange given the state of things out there. All right. Ari, hello Luciana, this is your client Ari. Congrats on the new office in Leblon. Thank you so much, Ari. And how you doing, Ari? Are you back? I'm not supposed to disclose client's information, so just let us know where you are right now, Ari. I know that Ari is always, traveling around, and I'm curious to know, Ari, where are you right now? Let us know where you are in your journey. Right, Samil, if I have the stable union certificate from Cartório, they still can refuse. Samil, they can always refuse, right? Like there is no 100% certainty that you will ever get any immigration. Immigration, in principle, is always like a privilege, is never a right. So yes, they can, potentially say, listen, you got the deed, the escritura of União Estável, but we still think this is a fraud, we're not gonna give you. They could do so, and then of course, naturally, you can fight back, you could file a lawsuit against the Brazilian immigration. You have access to the Brazilian legal system, even as a foreign citizen, right? But the reality is there is never something that is 100% guaranteed. This said, at least here at the firm, we never had a case in which applicants with the escritura, with the deed of União Estável would be refused, right? But we do try to cover all bases. We prepare the paperwork, right? Whenever our clients are applying, they are being represented by a law firm. So I do think that this is gonna, not necessarily increase the chances of approval, but maybe it will reduce the chances of, immigration officers being dismissive of your specific situation, all right? So, again, we never had a case here at the firm in which applicants through União Estável, again, União Estável supported by the deed, were denied the residency, right? But again, for sure, there is never 100% guarantee. Okay. Ari has a question. I'd like to ask, when applying for residency through property from within Brazil, does one need to be physically in Brazil from start to end of the application process? So Ari, here at the firm, we always want you to be in the country when you start. Because whenever we are filing, right? Whenever we are filing your application, we, as the law firm, we are representing that you are physically in the country. Because listen, if you are not physically in the country, the correct, place for you to file would be from abroad. Okay, so yes, whenever we are filing for the residency from within Brazil, we need you to be in Brazil physically. But that's gonna be when we press the the enter button, like for your application to be uploaded to the immigration system. If you happen to travel abroad on the next day, in our interpretation, that's not gonna be a major problem, because again, the representation that we, as your attorneys, are making that you are in Brazil, it's when we are pressing the button. So next day, if you happen to fly abroad, it's all good. And then eventually, yes, you're gonna need to come back to return, because then once the residency is approved, you're gonna need to attend an appointment for the biometrics and for the issuance of your temporary paperwork, which is the so-called protocolo, as we say in Portuguese, which is gonna be basically a printout of the same information you're gonna have in your future resident card. All right, Ari. Ari is also asking if there is any sort of maximum period of time that can exist between the purchase of the property and the application for residency through property acquisition. There is nothing written anywhere, Ari, all right? So as of today, from a legal perspective, right? Like sometimes there is a distance between the legal perspective and the reality of the Brazilian immigration, but at least from a legal perspective, there is no timeline whatsoever, right? Our concern, like what we typically share in our consultations with clients, is that things could change very quickly, right? Again, the qualifying amount nowadays for the residency through investment in real estate property in Brazil, it has been the same since 2018. So it's such a long time. And we have a federal administration nowadays that they are craving money like crazy. They are trying to find money in any way they can. So I think that, by increasing maybe, in 50% the minimum requirements, that would be such a low-hanging fruit for the current administration. So it's very well possible that, out of blue, the minimum is gonna increase. And then if you bought properties under the prior minimum amount, and now you're gonna need to meet a higher amount, guess what? This means that you are no longer able to apply under the same terms when you bought the property, okay? There is also the possibility, Ari, and you probably know about that in Europe, like Portugal, until 2023, you could also apply for the so-called golden visa by buying individual properties. You would buy an apartment in Lisbon, for I think it was 250,000 euros, and you would be able to secure, kind of permanent residency in Portugal. But since 2023, they said, listen, this is not working. Like this is, propelling property prices through the roof. And we Portuguese people, we can no longer afford buying a property in Portugal. So very bad deal. And so they changed the regulation. Now you can still get the golden visa in Portugal, but no longer through the acquisition of individual properties. So I don't think something like that is going to happen, Ari. But again, from the government perspective, they could very well change the rules. And if they change the rules, then you can no longer take advantage of the fact that you have potentially a property in Brazil. Samuel, if we take your services, is there any ways you can make the process fast or smooth for applying the PR and naturalization process, and how much you charge? So Samuel, we don't get you any shortcuts, right? Like we don't do any magic here at the office. What we do over here is like to advise you from a from an experience perspective, right? Like, so we have experience with those processes, so we organize your paperwork properly. We apply then, we file the applications in a timely manner, and we answer your questions in a diligent manner, right? And something that we see happening all the time is where people say, well, I thought the process was pretty straightforward, so I went ahead and I did it by myself. And not surprisingly, it didn't work, and now they're coming to us to basically redo everything that they tried to do unsuccessfully in the past. But I can tell you, here at the firm, we are not about shortcuts or over-promising. We are very conventional, traditional, and conservative. We just do what we are promising you to do, which is to take good care of you, use the best practices in the immigration industry, and to get you through the finish line, all right? But no shortcuts and no over-promises over here. All right, Ari, yes, I am in sunny Brazil. Congratulations, Ari. Good for you. Would you mind telling us where you are in Brazil? Is it the Northeast? Is it in the South? Like, you have a lot of freedom to pick whatever you want, right, Ari? Let us know where you are enjoying right now. Bill, don't forget to hit the thumbs up like button. All right, thumbs up over here, Bill. Thank you for your support. And yes, all of you who are participating in our live stream, if the background noise is not that much, I would appreciate if you could give us a like. The likes, as I always tell you, it helps our business, and it does help other people just like you to find our content. I really appreciate, Bill. All right, we have Ahmed. Ahmed is asking, in relation to the investor visa, from your experience, is it better to invest in residential or commercial properties in Brazil? Ahmed, so that's an interesting question. Typically, residential properties are going to cost more. Okay, so let me give you an example. If you're buying, like a commercial property in Rio de Janeiro downtown, you can very easily buy something, reasonable for 200 or 300,000 reais in Rio de Janeiro downtown. Now, for this amount, you're not gonna buy any residential properties at all, okay? Not even like a bad one, right? Like, I mean, for residential properties in Rio de Janeiro, in any decent area, they're gonna start at 500, 600, and over, and more. So, for you to achieve, Ahmed, like the minimum requirement, in most areas in Brazil, you are actually going to need to buy residential properties, because if you target commercial properties, you're going to end up buying something very big. And in Rio de Janeiro, also interesting to note, there is a very specific phenomena, which is like the HOA fees, or the homeowners association fees. Or if you buy a commercial property, it's not like homeowners, but I would say like commercial spaces owners association, you still have the same concept. They are, for some reason, they become very expensive. So in commercial real estate, there is a very, very fine or a very careful balance that you need to seek between the size of the property. Because if you get a large property, let's say you're buying a 1 million reais commercial property in Rio de Janeiro, right? Particularly if it is like a, like commercial suites, the risk that you're gonna be running is that you're gonna be paying a ton of money in terms of HOA fees. And when you're buying residential real estate, that's not gonna be as, expensive, at least when you compare area by area, right? When you're comparing two similar size properties, okay? So that's a tip that typically, foreign citizens, they're gonna be investing in real estate and not in commercial real estate when pursuing, the real estate investor visa in Brazil. Samil, how much do you charge? Samil, I think you're asking specifically about the support for the residency through União Estável. We charge 1,250 US dollars. Okay, that's kind of package we have. And it does include the entire advisory and up to the application. And if you are applying in either São Paulo or Rio de Janeiro, we actually go with you to the appointment, right? So that's very helpful. We have resources like to assist with the apostille step of it, with the sworn translation, right? But our professional fee is 1,250 US dollars, Samil. You can also send us an email to info@oliveiralawyers.com, and we can even most of the time provide you with a breakdown for the out-of-pocket fees, right? Because this is like our professional fee. There are also some out-of-pocket fees that you're gonna be incurring in this journey, and that's gonna be there, like if you ask us by email. All right, Samuel. Joseph, hola, hope you're feeling better now. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you for the kind words. I applied for the digital nomad visa, but I didn't submit any apostille concerning the employer. Is that needed? Will they ask later for that? So, Joseph, it's difficult for us to tell because it looks like whenever you are being represented by a lawyer or a law firm, they have slightly different requirements, right? So our experience may not be exactly representative of what's going to happen to your application. So I'm going to tell you how it works with us, and then hopefully it could be similar to what you're going to be doing. And another distinction, Joseph, maybe we need to know before I can even answer is whether you are applying through a consulate or if you are applying in Brazil, okay? Because when you are applying through a consulate, the general rule is that they are not gonna be so concerned with the apostille, because that consulate in particular, they know the documents in the country, right? So they wouldn't need necessarily an apostille. So let's say if you are applying from Canada, right? Like I see here a message from Aaron, and he's saying, I am in Canada, right? So let's assume Joseph is also in Canada, applying through the Brazilian consulate in Vancouver. The Brazilian consulate in Vancouver, they know the nature, or how to assess if a specific Canadian document is legit or not. So the consulate, typically, they are not going to be over concerned about the apostille, right? Now, if you are applying in Brazil, then it's a different ball game, because in Brazil, they don't know the documents, and the way they have, to increase the chances that a certain document is legitimate is by requesting an apostille, okay? This said, here at the firm, when we are applying on behalf of our clients for the digital nomad residency, because we're applying in Brazil, we typically will present an apostille only for the birth certificate, but not for the criminal records, right? Now, this is for the digital nomad. For the residency through marriage or residency through União Estável, yes, we're gonna need an apostille even for the criminal records, right? So this is the distinction, Joseph, that I wanted to make. There are many ifs and then, right? Like, I mean, it's not just a single rule, but what I can tell you is, like, whenever we are applying in Brazil on behalf of our clients, we're not gonna bother get an apostille on the criminal records, right? Unless the client has already requested. In this case, of course, we're gonna keep the apostille for the criminal records, but whenever they're starting from scratch with us, we say, listen, don't bother, right? Because in our statistics, 98% of our cases are approved, again, for the digital nomad with no apostille for the criminal records, right? There you go, Joseph. Aaron, good to see you, Aaron. Aaron says, I am in Canada now and want you to renew my digital nomad residency permit. I will schedule the meeting next week. Should I get a new Canadian criminal record check while here? Apostilled. It looks like we were discussing about the same topic, Aaron. So if you are applying through us for the renewal, it's not necessary for you to get an apostille on the background check. All right. Here at the firm, the metric is for every 100 cases, the Brazilian immigration is going to ask for an apostille on the criminal records for just 2 of our clients, right? So that's absolutely an exception. And whenever they are asking, it looks like to us that they are concerned with some aspect of the applicant, right? So typically here we say, listen, we don't need it. And if it happens that the Brazilian immigration is asking for the apostille, then they are going to give us 30 days to obtain the apostille, right? So in order to save our clients time and money, we typically say, Aaron, you don't need an apostille for the background check, all right? Yamel, nice to meet you, Yamel. How to buy a property and obtain residency in Águas de Lindóia, Minas Gerais, to go live in that beautiful place. From the Dominican Republic, we have friends and brothers from our congregation there. Very interesting place, Águas de Lindóia, Yamel. I think it is the first time ever that someone mentioned Águas de Lindóia. I used to go to Águas de Lindóia when I was a kid with my parents. And if I'm not mistaken, maybe you can go check online and let us know here, but in my memory, Águas de Lindóia was actually in the São Paulo state side, because Águas de Lindóia is almost by the border, right? Almost by the border between Minas Gerais and São Paulo. But in my memory, Águas de Lindóia is not in Minas Gerais, it's actually in São Paulo, right? So if you could do us a favor, Yamo, go check and let me know if I'm right or wrong. I think Águas de Lindóia is in São Paulo and not in Minas, but I could be wrong because this memory is like from 30 years ago. A very nice place. So to buy property over there, Yamo, this is going to be the same standard that you're going to see for most of the country. A property needs to be of at least 1 million reais, or if you buy more than one property, the amount combined for those properties should be at least 1 million reais. If you are from the Dominican Republic, potentially you can apply from within the country, meaning that you could come as a visitor, buy a property and apply while in Brazil. If you're not locally here, we would start the application in Brazil to get a pre-approval from the Brazilian immigration and then have the paperwork sent to the consulate or embassy in charge of the Dominican Republic, right? But I like the area a lot. It's a pretty interesting part of São Paulo. It's very safe. It's much safer than São Paulo city by itself. It's more like in the hills. So temperatures are usually lower in the Águas de Lindóia area. And it's just like a really beautiful area, right? Like a lot of green and, a very, or a much better standard of living, if you will, for those who are in this area than it's going to be for people living in São Paulo city, in my opinion. All right. Joseph, I have applied from Fortaleza, Brazil. Obrigado. You're welcome, Joseph. All right. We also have a presence in Fortaleza, even though we don't have a formal office as we speak. But we have many clients in Fortaleza, right? We have actually some YouTube videos focusing on Fortaleza. Fortaleza is a very good deal from a financial perspective. You can still buy beachfront properties in the Fortaleza area for reasonable amounts. And when you get a little bit farther away from Fortaleza, prices are going to get even better, right? So pretty interesting choice, Joseph. I really love Fortaleza. I'm very familiar with the Fortaleza area and the cities close by, right? Like a major choice of mine is going to be the city of Beberibe, right? I'm going to even write over here so you can visit if you haven't been there yet, Joseph. Beberibe, all right? Praia de Morro Branco. All right, so there you go. Like if you haven't been there, Beberibe Praia de Morro Branco is a major choice. It's something that I go there, at least 2 or 3 times a year. and you should definitely visit this area. It's like an amazing part of the Ceará coastal line. Samuel, does Brazil offer citizenship by exception? Samuel, if you could explain to me what do you mean by citizenship by exception, that could help me answer your question, right? I'm not entirely sure what you're mentioning over here, but you explain the concept a little bit, better than I'm gonna be able to answer your question, right? Like Brazil does offer citizenship under, different types of circumstances, but something that is very typical of the Brazilian immigration system is that you don't get citizenship for being a certain type of person. You get citizenship by actually living in Brazil on a permanent basis, right? So many times people are gonna tell us, listen, I'm married to a Brazilian, right? Like, how can I apply for a passport? Like, there is no such a thing. First, it does not matter if you are married to a Brazilian or if you have a Brazilian child. First, you need to live on a permanent basis in Brazil, and then based on your time of living in Brazil as a permanent resident, that's what's gonna allow you to become a Brazilian national. All right, Samuel, but let me know, I can elaborate more on that. Joseph will definitely visit. Muito obrigado. You're pretty welcome, Joseph. Pretty welcome and very lucky for being in Fortaleza. All right. In the meantime, let's talk about our next live streams. I have good news for you. We're gonna be together again on this Sunday. So Sunday, let me see, the day is gonna be on the 22nd. We're gonna meet again on Sunday at 3:30 Rio de Janeiro time, and we're gonna meet again on Wednesday next week, 7 days from today, meaning June the 25th, right? So we have, finally we have some, back-to-back live streams. I appreciate your patience with our scheduling. So live stream today, the 18th, live stream on Sunday, the 22nd, and then we are together again on a live stream on the 25th. And then we're gonna skip on Sunday, the 29th, right? And I'm unsure about July the 2nd, but good thing, the next 2 dates, meaning Sunday the 22nd, and then Sunday the 22nd, and then June the 25th, we're gonna be together here at the channel. All right, so it looks like we don't have any more participations. I wanna say thank you for joining me today. I wanna say thank you for your patience with all the noise. And I promise you next time we're not gonna have any noise. It's gonna be on a Sunday. Thank you for the likes, thank you for the participations, and wishing you guys a blessed